For NVIDIA users, sorry. I needed to clarify.
Okay. There we go. All right. So, who wants to go with their first tip and trick first? Anybody have a good one that they want to start us off with? I'm assuming that we will not do this the whole time. We'll kind of branch off. So, Steve, why don't you take us off first?
I'm gonna kick us off with the best tip and trick ever, and it is the fact that I just mentioned it earlier. But did you know that once that you can skip the profile section if you are installing Arch using the Arch install script, it will default to the minimal profile, which is Packstrap basically, and then you can do anything your heart desires in Chroot, because at the end it will prompt you if you want to Chroot or not into your installed system, and when you answer yes, you can do whatever you want. This is your basic your this is basically your installed system without a desktop, without anything, because you skipped all that. You can install the desktop environment or window manager with the packages, with only the packages you choose, and then you can set up your Samba, you can set up your BTRFS. If you have chosen to use BTRFS, you can do whatever you want using the chroot, and once you're done, exit, reboot, you're done. So my favorite tip and trick that I discovered recently, and I'm using to my advantage.
Smart ass of me saying, or you could just use OpenSUSE. But
Oh, come on.
uh, okay. Anyway, have another one they want to go with, or was this a shit topic? All right. Here's one. Alias everything. Literally, if you're gonna use a terminal, alias everything. You'll never need to remember anything hard. Especially your install stuff. Like if you install and update stuff, alias that stuff. You'll never need to remember the flags. Especially if you're on Arch, because nobody knows what those stupid flags mean. Steve?
Okay. Since you're talking about aliasing, uh, I have I have a shit ton of aliases. To install packages is install. To update it's update, and to push packages to my repository it's urepo, update repo. There's a shit ton of aliases you can do. I've seen aliases go as far down as rip recently installed packages. Rip, rest in pieces. But hey, uh, you can alias anything to anything basically.
Mm-hmm.
Aliases are a lifesaver, and it's not Arch specific. It can be done on any distro. It can be done on ZSH, Bash, anything.
Go ahead, Dennis.
When you are scripting a command, at least with Bash, and it's a Unix Linux environment, and you need to decide on a condition to do something, you test for a file, and it can be an empty file, but test for a file in order to specify the condition.
That's a good idea.
Mm. Those tests are always good to learn. Terminal for Life, when he was around, was always doing stuff like that. But I'm horrible at Bash scripting these days. I haven't had any practice lately. D Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, just to add on to the excuse me, the aliases. Excuse me. I put all my common aliases in a .bashrc personal file, and then whatever distro I'm using, I use exactly what Dennis just suggested. I check to see if that file is there, and then I just source it.
Mm.
So that way I can just move it very easily from system to system, whether it's a VM or physical server or what have you. And you keep that in your Git. So as you learn a really cool one, you just add it there. And then I just found that's really handy. Even in Nix, I have it source and look for that file and source it.
Yeah,
Just to keep.
that's a good idea. I source a file, but I don't check to see if it exists. I just If it doesn't exist, bash pops up. Hey, this file doesn't not found. You know, that's my
Exactly.
that's my test. Steve.
Well, another tip I want to share with everyone is all the commands you learn as you go in Linux. If you don't rely on your memory to remember them, don't save them just in a regular notepad. Just save them in a script, and you can echo out what each command does at the and you will see that quickly enough you're going to end up with with a automated script that does all these things you learned through time. All you have to do is run the script, and it's going to run through these commands one by one. Just make sure to put a pause in between each major command.
And just know that the last one's rm-rf.
Oh yes, don't do that. But as long as you know the commands you're running and you have tested them before and you want to keep them, just script them. Turn them into a useful script that you're going to be able to run after a fresh install, so it does everything you usually do on your system to get up and running quickly.
War Thunder, go ahead.
I say, leading off of that, one of the other best tricks I've ever had is keep good backups. If you're like me, like you've used the dd command before and understand that it really does mean disk destroyer when you don't know what's going on, I have wiped out 4 terabytes worth of data, DDing the wrong drive because I happened to have it connected at the time. So whether it's your system with time shift or snapper for like ButterFS snapshots or whatnot, you should keep some backups of your data and some backups of your system because updates can really screw you over.
Exactly, and specifically when you connect a drive that instead of another, that the previous one was SDC, but the new one took SDC as well, because you unplugged the previous one, you will end up deleting the wrong drive. Yeah, you should be careful with that.
D-dubs?
I was going to say in that case, LSBLK space minus F is your friend when you're doing DD, showing you not only the
100%.
devices but the file system. I run that anytime I'm doing anything, like even just making an ISO onto a USB stick. I run it, okay, and then let me check it again just to make sure.
Yep.
Yeah,
I made a
100%.
mistake that day and I will not make it again.
The -F thing is new to me. I'm going to use
It
that all the
shows you the
time.
file systems.
That's cool. Dennis?
Yes, it's very cool. And then LSUSB, of course, but yeah, LSBLK minus F is really, really nice, especially like if you've migrated file systems or whatever. You've got a disk, you don't know what's on it, how it's formatted. It gives you the labels. It gives you all of that. It comes, and if you're running, if it's a part of a ZFS pool, you'll see the pool info, all that kind of stuff. In LVM info too, as well.
Yep.
Cool. Dennis?
Save to an NAS most of your most important files other than what you're currently working with, and copy what a bunch of schools and companies do on a smaller scale, and then you can have multiple NASs. Sorry, I call them NASs a lot of times, but their NAS is the proper term. But have other ones in order to back up that one so that you never lose any information.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Back up a backup to a backup of a backup.
Also, test your backups. Just make sure that it actually is there. A lot of people go halfway. Oh, I got a lot of backups, but then they find out that half their transfer did not work for whatever reason, and they're missing half of their family photos. That happens a ton.
I just lost 10 terabytes because my 10 terabyte drive just died.
So, Steve, you need better backups, bro.
Yeah, they invented this thing called RAID.
Well, the data that existed on that drive was just legally obtained movies.
Yes. The also, just kind of as an offshoot, since we mentioned RAID again, I was actually surprised at how easy setting RAID up was, like software RAID. I had never done it before, like ever, and it was just a few commands and it worked fine. Josh tuned in and said I was doing it wrong, but I did it fine. I did it fine. Um, and so I bought. So just to kind of harken back to a couple of lugs ago, we were talking about home servers. I bought the. So I ended up using the Dell. I talked about that last time, and then this time I got a 8-bay hard drive enclosure, and I got some refurbished hard drives put in it. So I have like 40 terabytes of hard drive space now. Yeah, I'm not gonna run out of space anytime soon. It's good. But anyways, I set up a RAID array on that, and I went RAID 0 this time just because I don't care about any of the. I mean, I do care about the data, but it's all backed up elsewhere. So I don't. I just would rather have that large amount of space. But it was very very easy. So, D-Dubs, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask you. So you used MD, I assume.
Yeah, MDADM or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, pretty reliable, especially in this stripe.
The thing I'm worried about the most is if I have to switch to a different distro, which I don't foresee myself having to do, but more if this computer dies and I have to put it on a new computer, how I'm going to get that to transfer over. Now, what I think I'll probably end up doing is if I have to do that is to just basically clone the hard drive and put it in the new system. It's probably what I'll do. But if I end up having to distro hop, then I'd be worried about it. I haven't really looked into how I would transfer. I'm assuming that it's possible. I don't know yet.
Yeah, make sure you save your MD config information.
Yeah.
Because the drive should have some RAID metadata on it, so that as long as you constructed it using labels, not using dev SDAs, that sort of thing, it should reconstruct on the new system. You may want to even test it.
Well, I will test it, but I'm also going to make sure that everything is just always backed up to multiple places. Then if it dies, it'd be fine. Steve, go ahead.
Before I start with my next tip, am I the only one sending out tips right here? But before I start, I want to mention that this drive, I ended up wiping with a DD command by mistake, and it had OpenSUSE on it. So OpenSUSE doesn't want to remain on my system for whatever reason.
Skill issue. Skill issue.
Of course. My next tip is, if in case you are using ButterFS, instead of using Timeshift, use Snapper.
Oh, definitely.
It's the best solution, especially with a tool. If you use a tool created by none other than the Garuda people, it's called ButterFS Assistant. It should be called Snapper Assistant, but they called it ButterFS Assistant. But it's mainly for Snapper, and it's going to allow you to manage your snapshots from within the GUI on your active system.
Yeah, it's
amazing. Use it.
Oh yeah, ButterFS for life. D-Dubs?
Yeah, just to add that it's also available on Arca, the BetterFS Assistant. However, be very careful on your schedules, because the default not only does like hourly snapshots of your root and so forth, but every time you do a package, it's creating a snapshot. Very quickly, you can consume your space unless you happen to have a very large disk. The second tip with BetterFS is also create a schedule for your home partition, because by default, depending on how you install it, home is not included. Only the root is included.
Yep.
You think, oh, I've got a snapshot, my home's up. No, it's not there.
No, and just as a side note, it took me maybe 3 months until Eric was convinced to include ButterFS Assistant on the Arco repositories.
I thought, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought you were big on XFS. Is that what the one that you were using?
I don't use ButterFS. I'm just adding to the topic of this episode. You said tips. It doesn't mean that it's tips we are using of things we are using.
I was like, are you cheating on XFS? That's amazing.
I will never cheat on XFS. The only caveat with XFS, because it does copy on write, when you copy files on let's say on a USB stick, and you try to eject the USB stick, it will take forever to eject because it's still copying because it's 100% done, but it's because copy on write, that dialog is useless because it's going to reach 100%, and the activity is still happening in the background.
So just on the topic of snapshots, you can control by going into the snapper config file how many snapshots that it keeps.
Yeah.
OpenSUSE by default will keep 10, I think 10 or 15 ones not marked important. It'll keep all of them marked important, which is not the best thing because Zipper, when it runs, will mark every snapshot that it creates as important. So you got to kind of fix that. And it's not as if like the biggest problem there is that most people install most of their software at the beginning of their distro installation. So you go through this entire like wave of installing stuff, and then you just use your computer. Like most people, once they have all their stuff installed, they don't install anything else for a very long time. So if you're going to rely on ButterFS, don't forget to do a snapshot every once in a while on your own. If you're not going to be installing stuff, don't rely just on your package manager to do the snapshots for you.
Exactly.
So
I would agree on that 100%.
Also, just put this out there. I'm going to make a proposal for all of Linux. Let's make ButterFS the default.
Never. XFS as
system.
default.
No,
Forever.
Shut up, Steve. I'm meeting you. ButterFS is better. This is why we're never going to do it. We're going to be on ext4 forever because we're never going to agree on a future, which is going to be sad. Also, Drew, we need to contact the Debian guys and make it easier on Debian to use ButterFS.
Then I would have no channel. So
he'd have no video ID. I watch every single one of those because it's just fascinating. But I really want a GUI system to make better subvolumes and stuff, or just make better default subvolumes, I guess.
I think I have one video over 50,000 views, and it's that one.
It's good stuff. And I don't think we're gonna have to worry about it because they're just gonna stick with ext4 as default for literally ever. But everybody will. There's nothing wrong with ext4. It's just, it's not ButterFS. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I wish that they had basically kind of like what Arco does and does a pretty good job of a proper layout. I do like the fact that with the advanced install in Debian, you can easily change to XFS, which I also prefer, frankly, over ButterFS. ButterFS in RAID has issues other than mirroring. It's, I don't know. For me, the jury's still out on ButterFS overall, but I do like Debian is improving, and thanks to Drew, we can fix the rest.
There was a recent addition to the Linux kernel. I can't remember the name. It's not a new file system. It's been around for a while, but it's a combination of XFS and ButterFS. It has the best of both worlds, and it just got added to the Linux kernel. It's like bchunk, something like that.
CacheFS or Cache2FS?
Bcache, maybe that's it.
Bcache.
I heard about it on Linux Matters, or one of the late night Linux shows, and that sounded interesting. But I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried that we're going to end up having even more fragmentation in the file system space, and everybody will be using something different. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. I just there was a recent article on Phoronix about bcachefs sees more fixes for Linux 6.9, and I do agree with you. We're getting way too many file systems these days. There should be the top 3 and call it a day.
I mean, it's just never going to happen. Everybody's going to do what they want to do, and that's fine. That's the way of open source. But it's just it makes things a little confusing, but also it doesn't, because honestly, no distro uses any of these offshoots by default anyways. They all use ext4, and that's just the way it is and way it will be. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to have to strongly disagree with Steve about limiting choices. I come from a storage background, and years ago, when XFS was still pretty new, we switched to it for video applications. If that wasn't there, I mean, ext4 was just incapable of delivering the performance. And other people may, like BetterFS or whatever comes down the pike or whatever, and it also kind of stifle innovation. Because someone say, well, like say we're talking about this combination, of a BetterFS kind of XFS kind of thing. Well, if there aren't anybody to test it and try it and find the bugs, because there's no corporation hiring a large, QA team to do that, yeah, we're kind of guinea pigs, but we don't care. We're experimenters. We want to try new things and solve problems. So no, I cannot disagree strong enough with limiting choices. That then we're going down the Microsoft path. You've seen the latest fix from them. I call it fix. The next update to Windows 11 is going to literally prevent applications from being installed. For certain applications for tuning the system, from being installed. Yeah, no. Choice is the only way that Linux, in my opinion, continues to be as amazing as it is and grow. So that we don't just find, oh, you only get this because I think that's the best file system. Anyway, rant off.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify. That's the reason why I said we should keep a handful, but not way too many, because it might add to fragmentation. I didn't mean limit the choice, as in just have one and call it a day. No, just keep the ones that matter, and the ones that are just hobbyist file systems or just passing by file systems, keep them at bay, or just don't make them. Don't publicize them the way you publicize the main supported ones.
D-dubs?
I say let the market or the users decide. So again, who's going to bell the cat? Who's going to decide which file systems are the ones that are included?
The use case,
Well,
adoption.
okay,
But again, where do you get that information? Who's using it? How many? For what purpose?
it's going to be exactly like it's done with distros, right? Like Void and Ardix and Aspen or whatever, all the minor distros that you can think of. They all exist. They have user bases. It's going to be the same thing with file systems. They're all going to have use cases. They're all going to have file systems. They're just not going to have popularity because, and this is true even of the semi-major file systems like ButterFS and XFS and whatever, the ones that people have heard of. Those are still going to be second tier because ext4 is the thing that we know we can rely on, and everybody knows that you can rely on it, even if it has its own issues. It's kind of, the file system has to be the one thing that actually works and works well always. And unfortunately, whether it's true or not, ButterFS has a reputation for not being as stable as you'd want it to be. Now, I've been using ButterFS for 3 or 4 years now, like straight, and haven't had any issues. But it was just like 2 months ago or whatever that a game-breaking bug came down, and it was keeping all the metadata, which was filling up everybody's drive. Like, all distros had to push down a brand new version of the kernel in order to fix it, and that was a kernel-based bug. So that's still happening, and that stuff doesn't fix the reputation of ButterFS. So it's going to be XT4, probably for ever. Is there, all right, file and system nerds, is there an ext5, or is is that like the sequel or something? Is that something that's ever going to happen, or does it already exist, or what? I don't even know.
I certainly hope not. There are just too many limitations with the structure of ext. I mean, everybody knows ext4 is not a new file system. It is an add-on to an existing one.
Yeah.
It's not something that will scale, both in sizes and number of files, and
They finally deprecated They're finally starting to deprecate ext2 in the kernel.
I wonder if anybody actually. I'm positive there's still people out there using ext2 on some distros, because there's some. Isn't like Ubuntu 14.04 still being supported? Like, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they still have extended support
So
for some reason.
I mean, I may be misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure that ext2 was what 1404 used, but maybe
Oh, it was 3.
it was 3. I knew, but that's 10 years ago, so there's still plenty of people using this kind of stuff. Silent Bob, go
For
ahead.
like
it's got
hours.
extended support.
I just want to add on that whole idea of
Holy shit, that game is
still
terrible.
being a thing somewhere.
Absolutely.
Hold on a second. We got somebody.
Those just get mods to feel like I know how to play first person shooter. I know.
Who's actually talking? Okay, go ahead, Silent
No
Bob.
idea. I just want to add in that idea of extend 2 because ext2 is still like a supported option inside of the Slackware installer, to be to no one's surprise.
I'm
distro
surprised
that's
they're not
older
still
than
using
dirt
punch cards.
still
I'm
got
just okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You use ext4 though.
I
Bob.
do, yes.
I thought so. Say like
I've actually been thinking of going on Steve's boat. I've been thinking of moving my system over to XFS.
Just make sure not to eject your USB drive when the dialogue disappears.
Yeah.
or use Crusader. It'll tell you Crusader has Butterfest support and it will work well with XFS 2. The progress meter will go away, but when you try to eject it, it just says this drive is busy. You can't do that yet.
Yeah, same with Dolphin, but it's kind of annoying because some people think I've had people tell me I ejected my drive because the dialogue disappeared, even though Dolphin was telling me that not to eject the drive. But when the dialogue disappears, that means the file is copied. I'm like, nah, not with XFS. No, be careful.
You guys
I've
know.
learned with especially Dunst. Dunst is great about like the dialogue will disappear, but then I just wait around a little bit because then it says now safe to eject the drive.
Yeah, same with Dolphin.
Yeah, Dennis, go ahead.
My system, a lot of times, for whatever reason, it'll tell you it's trying something about trying to eject, but it won't tell you that it's finished. So I just look at the USB's light, and when it stops working the light, then I know it's probably finished a lot of times.
Fortunately, a
Yeah,
lot of drives don't have lights anymore. Fortunately.
Exactly. Exactly what I wanted to say. Not a lot of drives have a light. Look at this one. This one does not have a light. Nowhere.
Yeah.
It's a aluminum thing.
Yeah.
It's an SD card reader, but
Even some big ones now they've went the Apple pulling the headphone jack route of no lights because it's cheaper, right? So,
yeah.
I don't remember what I was gonna say. It's fine. With ButterFS, I think that my favorite thing about it is that it works so well on OpenSUSE. I had a good look with it on Fedora, but Fedora doesn't set it up well out of the box. I had a good time with it on Arch for quite a while, or Arco, I guess it was, for quite a while as well. And it just works so well when you have it set up right and you have the right sub volumes and you have Snapper doing everything automatically in the background for you when you install or do an update. It just works so well, and it not only saved my ass so many times when like an update goes wrong, but also especially if you're like me who switches around and installs stuff that really shouldn't go together well. It's so easy just to roll back. So for example, I installed Plasma 6 and used that for a while. I uninstalled Plasma 6 so I can install GNOME because why not? I did it for like a half an hour, and then I just rolled back to when Plasma 6 was installed. It was so cool, and the fact that I could do it just makes me happy. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say my experience with BetterFS is a little bit different. Not on necessarily a system drive, but using their mirroring. I did that on a Proxmox server, and I kept getting alerts about corrupted bits. And I would go and I would check it. It'd be, okay, it's fine. Wait a little while, get another alert, get another alert. So I've had a bit of a storied past with BetterFS.
Yeah, I don't think it.
And-
I don't think it does RAID very well. But I've never, even on the RAID array that I just set up, I used DXT4 because I knew it was going to work for well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, no, in this case, mirroring traditionally had been deemed good with BetterFS, and everybody has been saying stay away from like a RAID 5 or a RAID 6 in BetterFS. You know, so yeah, it was just once I switched that over to basically, well, for a while I did ZFS, and it ultimately ended up on XFS with like what you did MD, and zero problems.
well, I think I'm not technical enough to know this for sure, but it feels like the reason why it doesn't work well on a lot of the RAID tiers is because of the way copy on write works and the way that they implement it on Butterfest. It just those two things don't really feel like they go together well because of the way that things are laid out on a RAID array. But it feels like they should have gotten closer to it being stable on RAID than it has been. But maybe that's just not a priority for them. I don't know. D-dubs?
Yeah, just on copy on write. That's used, by the way, in almost every RAID array out there because of its efficiency, and especially with snapshots. If your device supports snapshots, like copy on write is basically not mandatory.
Well, ZFS is copy on write too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
copy on write is
they obviously have it working in some places, but Butterfs hasn't got there yet, or apparently.
Again, it's that's more of how you're sort of managing your writes. To reduce defrag. Again, to make it very simple for snapshots, instead of overwriting a block, I copy it to a new one, so that if there is a snapshot, I don't have to actually move a block. I simply have a pointer in the snapshot to the old block. So, for example, if I'm writing to a block location 5,000, and then I do another write that updates that, I'm going to write it to a different block. Let's say I'm going to write it to block 10,000, but my snapshot still points to block 5,000. That's how you're able to roll back. It doesn't actually make a copy of your original data. It writes a new copy on write, and then does the pointers back to, if you're running snapshots, back to the original data. So that when you roll it back, you're simply using the snapshot to point you to the data as it was at that time. All of them work that way. So whether it's RAID or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can do it on the regular disk, a single disk. You can do it on mirroring. You can do it on, doesn't matter.
Dennis?
If you are using Timeshift and you're using ext4, they really need to make that program faster, at least on my distro, because it's great when it runs in the background and stuff like that. But I think that, unfortunately, in Windows, System Restore has us a little bit beat on speed itself. Maybe it shouldn't work the same way as that ever works, but they have us beat on speed with that.
Doesn't Timeshift just use for the non-Butterfest part of Timeshift? Doesn't it just use rsync in the background?
Yeah, it uses rsync.
Exactly. That's why it's slow. It actually has to do the copy.
Yeah, rsync is just inherently the way it works is not fast.
Right. And its system restore is basically a differential. So it's a much less data that you're actually rolling back on that restore point. That's why it's fast. Just like with a snapshot, it's only the delta.
Snapshots are so good. All right. Anyway, let's move away from being file system nerds again. we seem to get into file systems way more on the lug than anywhere else. Steve, go ahead.
So you want tips again?
Yeah,
Okay.
bring us another tip, Steve.
Okay, I got a lot of them. I got a Santa's bag full of tips.
One at a
So,
time, so we can discuss.
okay. All right. This tip revolves around how can I put it without moving to a shill area, but plasma. It's a plasma tip because I'm the plasma shill. Um, when you want to install when you want to install themes on Plasma, never ever install them from the AUR or the Arch repositories if you want to have a stable system. Install them straight from source and only install the ones that are specifically made for your version of Plasma so you don't encounter the same issue as that user who had his home directory deleted because he tried to install a Plasma 5 global theme on Plasma 6. Just make sure you're in the right section because if you go to store.kde.org, you're going to see new sections appearing for specifically made for Plasma 6. And if you install from not the store directly, just go to the theme you want to install. There will be a link up top under the profile of the user who shared it to their GitHub and install from there.
Okay.
Never install from KDE store or AUR or Arch Linux repository if you want the stable system. And if you do that, if you follow the steps correctly, you're gonna have no issue. Because I know that because I use Plasma and I test, and I'm a geek, so I know how to do things, how to test things, and where to go and stuff.
So, Steve, you're saying to download it from the website and then
no,
install
not
it that
download from the web, download from GitHub from the source directly because
So not
in most cases, their themes will include an install script. That's gonna make your life easier.
I want to rant for a second. Can I rant for a second?
Go ahead, boss.
Okay, Plasma
Regulate your
has
channel.
Plasma has the built-in way of installing these things, and Steve just told us not to use it. That tells us everything we need to know about Plasma. Okay, and this isn't a Plasma 6 problem. This has been a Plasma problem for literally the beginning of time, ever since this was a feature. Things are not great when you use that, and they break things all the time. But the worst part about that whole system is that they allow you to upload multiple versions of things, and you can only install one of them through that interface where you go in and say add new themes or whatever. You can only install one of them. Or if they are really different versions, a lot of dumbass developers don't put the version number in the file name, so you don't know which ones is actually the newer version, so you just have to guess, which is not the way that it should be done. It's just it's infuriating. Also, they've had this stupid bug that's been there for at least 5 years, where every once in a while you'll get this pop-up that says error, network error, or something like that. We can't find the thing that you're looking for. Plasma, I love you, but you're a piece of shit. Steve?
I just wanted to agree with you on that rant 100%. That's why I was using this as a tip. Do not ever use Plasma's dialogue as Matt said, because number one, it's buggy as heck. Number two, they barely ever list the version number of the Plasmoid, so you know which one you're installing. They're getting better a little bit on Plasma 6 because now that dialog only includes Plasma 6. If you are on Plasma 6, it will only include Plasma 6 files, but developers put out multiple versions of their Plasmoids and themes and so on and so forth. You don't know which one is the latest because they didn't put the version in them. And another problem that I guess, Matt, you didn't encounter yet, and I wish you don't encounter it, is the fact that when you click install, most of the time it's going to install the older version for whatever reason, because the install button or download button is still linked to the older version, and you will end up with incompatible Plasmoid message. So that's why I keep recommending. I will forever recommend that users do that from source. Please do it from source until KDE figure out the issue and finally fix it after, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 years from now.
What they need to do is remove the feature completely. Just
agree.
every single one of the, so they have it for KWin scripts, they have it for global themes, they have it for color schemes, they have it for icons, all wallpapers. Remove them all, shove all that stuff into Discover. Just have it one place and use it, put it in Discover, make it easy for developers and creators of these things to update that stuff. And Discover already has a fantastic way of managing versions. Like it's already built in. All you got to do is the problem with that solution, of course, is that not every distro uses Discover. So because Discover itself is also a pain in the ass. So in other words, the moral of the story is just use GNOME.
No. Well, there is this thing. Remember the days where Discover actually detected updates for plasmoids and themes and add-ons?
It doesn't do that anymore?
It doesn't do that anymore.
Why would it do that? Dennis, go ahead.
Why can't we just start putting the themes and stuff like that in like regular distro packages or something, as far as what KDE does, and then to apply a theme you install a package, and it can have a system where it installs the package in a special way where it still just installs the package. That's the whole command, but it does it besides your package manager.
The AUR maintainers are gonna love the fact that there's 30 different versions of the Arc theme. They're gonna love that. Also, if you're on Arc and if you're on Arch and you have this special awesome theme, let's just call it Grovebox, and you have that, but I'm on OpenSUSE and it's not in my repositories, I'm going to be very mad and very upset. Also, the people who create the themes have to package it for every little distro, and it's just too much work. I think that's the reason why it doesn't happen. Steve, go ahead.
I wanted to add that this is impossible because themes don't function unless they are don't function correctly unless installed into your home directory, which package managers will never touch. So it's impossible to create packages out of themes and plasmoids and fonts. No, fonts, yes, but themes and global themes and stuff like that, never, because especially if you use Flatpaks, because Flatpaks only have access to your home directory. They cannot access files outside. So if you want to use your system theme on Flatpaks, it has to be installed in your home directory. Otherwise, it will not function. So that's impossible. So install from source.
Yeah. See, the thing is that KDE discovered what GNOME already knew, is that theming is really hard. So KDE has tried to fix the problem by literally throwing every solution at it possible. So you have color schemes and global themes and appearance themes and all this stuff, right? So they have every setting you could possibly want, and it's confusing. It's broken. GNOME says, well, we're just not going to do it at all. So they both went to the different extremes. So theming is weird on Linux. It's something that one of the reasons why I like Plasma so much is because you can do theming very well. It feels integrated, whereas if you're going to try to theme GNOME, it's very hacky. But it's also astonishingly broken a lot of the times. And one of my biggest disappointments with Plasma 6 is that they didn't do a better job of changing anything regarding theming and stuff.
That is correct to a certain degree, but that paved way to some plasmoids, because now that Plasma 6 has opened the door a little bit wider to when it comes to widgets. One of the developers created a widget that is so amazing and so well integrated into Plasma that I am never going to use my system without it. It's the quick settings thing. It mimics the one that is on Apple that GNOME took, and then now Plasma. But that quick settings plasmoid is amazing. The guy is continuously pushing updates, and now he integrated weather in it. He's integrating more and more. He wants to integrate KDE Connect into it. So you don't need the separate icon for KDE Connect. It's gonna all be integrated into that quick settings thing. But in order to hide the one that is because Plasma will always do Plasma. If you install KDE Connect, there will always be that extra KDE Connect plugin icon in the system tray. To hide it, you just go to the system tray entries, you just hide it, and just keep the one in the quick settings one, and it's perfect. The only thing he's trying to figure out right now is to integrate Pipewire and the audio stuff in the thing. Currently, you can only increase or decrease the general volume of your system. He wants to integrate more granularity into it. But other than that, it's an amazing widget. And that was only made possible because of Plasma 6 new JSON language thing.
Just 1 second, Dennis. Drew in the chat, Arthur Thompson wants to know: are you still using DWM? I take it from the grin that he's back on BSPWM as his home.
No, I'm using DWM.
Oh, really? Are you still there? That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually using it right this second. Yeah.
That's cool. I constantly go through and patch it for fun and then never use it. Because I'm a C nerd. Dennis, you're first. Go ahead.
One more idea for the Plasma developers. Instead of same idea, but instead of using system packages, invent for specifically that purpose. To still be safer, though, their own complete custom version of a package manager that's available everywhere. Plasma is available, and then do the same thing.
That exists.
That's my final idea for them for now, but that's an idea they could use.
Yeah, they actually have it. It's that what's it called? The Opium Store or something?
OCS.
Oh, something like that. Yeah, nobody uses it, by the way. Nobody uses it, but that was originally a KDE project. It's just kind of transitioned into everything, I think.
OCS URL.
Yeah. Nobody uses it. D-Dubs, go ahead.
I was just going to briefly tail onto the DWM. It's kind of fun, and thanks to Drew's video, I'm trying to do it on NixOS. If you think patching it on Debian is fun, you should try it with NixOS.
All right, explain to us why it would be different. Doesn't it have something to do with paths?
Declare it. In other words, in Debian or any traditional normal Linux, you would just patch it and then rebuild. Well, in the declarative environment of NixOS, in the configuration for DWM, you have to declare the patches, their URL, and the SHA-256 to make sure that it's all good. But you don't. So you then build it, and you're like, well, I hope the patch integrated okay.
Okay, this right here is why my NixOS review is never coming.
Yeah, but again, the beauty of it though is once you have it, you don't have to go through the issues that you do with DWM every time. You say, okay, well, I've installed DWM in the package. Okay, now I'm gonna go find my patches. Let me do my diffs. Okay, this patch failed, because you figured it out once. You now have the recipe, so now you just play that. So that once I have my configuration patched and I save it in my repository, I can hand it to you and say, look, here's DWM with all the best patches, or all the best patches I think. And you wouldn't have to go through any of the pain. I've done it for you.
But I'm confused, because you can do that. Like, I have a whole patch. I have 27 patches on my DWM. I can take that file and just hand it to you, and you could use it on any distro. That's not an NixOS specific thing. It's literally, I've already done the patching. It's like it's done. Like, that's not. That
hasn't been my experience with DWM. If you're running the exact same, let's say, build of DWM, the source that's executable, but that's not always the case. If I'm running, 651, your patches could be against 6.5. That source code isn't the same, so I can't just patch it. There's going to be merge errors
Well, no,
because they're not identical.
no. I've already done the patching, so I have my DWM. I've already done all the patching. I just take the directory, put it up on Git, so people can download it and build
Yes.
it. It's already there. The patching, and all the merge conflicts are already done. The only problem you would have is if you're on a RPM based distro, in which case you have to change some of the lines in a couple of the DWM.
Like I say, you've patched. Let's say you're running DWM 6.5. The actual source version of DWM.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running 651. I can't just take your patches because there are going to be changes in the source code between those two. And the patching. So unless I use your version exactly how you have it, or maybe I've got an older one.
Okay. Yeah, you would overwrite and use my version, but that's the way that DWM has traditionally worked. Is you use the version of the code that you do. But let's be fair, they don't change. Although they've been changing versions hell of a lot more lately than they used to. All right, Steve, go ahead. You had your hand raised. I'm sorry.
This is going to be near and dear to your heart. This tip is going to be near and dear to your heart, dear reader. But this is to all people who are bookworms and who read a lot of books, like Matt here. He eats up books like I have lunch. But if you want to organize your books, I recommend a Docker container called Bookshelf. There you can organize your books per categories or by artists. Not artists. What do you call them? Authors. Yeah, authors and stuff like that. And to accompany that, in case you are more of an audio book listener, there's something called Audio Bookshelf, which I have. I have every single Isaac Asimov and Star Wars fan book and the entire Dune series, including the offshoot ones by his son, Brian Herbert. So I've been into that. So yeah, I recommend those two applications for all the book listeners and book readers, in case you want to organize all your libraries. Because I've been into Dune for the past 2 months, and my brain feels like it has had a bit of that spice melange.
Now that I have my home lab set up, I'm going to be getting into a lot of that Docker stuff. I'm looking forward to it. Dennis, go ahead.
My old way of organizing books, but I'll probably try programs in the future like that. But my oldest way of doing it, as far as the nonfiction ones, like that taught me basic computer skills and let's see, other nonfiction books that are like textbooks sort of. I organized them in a system I invented called tutorial order. I had a label on each book that told me which tutorial order, and that's how I knew if I was building the shelf from scratch because I moved, how to set it up again.
Cool.
That's not a bad idea. But yeah, and I recommend people read Dune. It's wonderful. I've never became a fan of any story that I read until I started reading Dune. And don't compare it to the movies. None of the movies will give the books any good. It's gonna basically destroy the whole story. But it's not for the lighthearted. It's for the people who are willing to put up with weird mushroom. It's like it gives you the feeling that you have to be wasted and high as a kite before you read them. Because hey, guess what? Frank Herbert, he was high as a kite when he wrote them, so he was high on mushrooms specifically.
Okay. I'm reading the Mistborn series right now. So here's another tip for you. If you're going to use multiple window managers and you want to make sure that when you inevitably distro hop, you have everything where it needs to be, back up your configuration files to Git. Just do it. I know a lot. I've talked to quite a few people in the last like week and a half or so that have 2 window managers. Usually it's not as bad as me. Like I have like 9 window managers installed right now. Nobody's like me. Vast majority of people aren't like me. But a lot of people still have 2. And they go and they customize them both. But they find that they like one over the other. And then they spend a lot of time away from the other one and they forget how to configure that because it's like in Haskell or something. Let's just say, for example, and you forget the Haskell that you learned while you were configuring it. Back up to your Git page, and then also as you're going through and making your changes, document what you're learning in a README file. Like anything that you think that you might forget later, put it in a markdown file, upload it as readme.md. That way you can, if you come back to that window manager later, you can know exactly the things that you've done. If you don't want to do that, add comments to the configuration file so that you can know what you did and why you did it. I'm having this problem right now because I came back to Xmonad. And somewhere, I know, it's stupid. I've actually learned to like Xmonad, but when I was configuring it for the first time and actually learning how to use it, somewhere along the line, I made the change in that bottom loop at the bottom that basically tells it to execute everything as far as it can understand Haskell, which is still not at all. There's a section there somewhere where I put in something that kept dual floating windows from not appearing in the correct order. So if I have, say for example, I'm in Audacity and I have the export audio dialog up and then I hit export, instead of the progress bar appearing on top like it should, it appears underneath that window, and it happens constantly. And there's obviously more examples of this, and there's something in the Xmonad configuration file that is making it happen this way. And I explicitly remember when I was learning how to do the Haskell to make sure that dialogues and file pickers and stuff were floating, I remember on Reddit someone saying you have to do this in order to prevent things from not being in the wrong order. I remember that. I can't find that Reddit post anywhere, so I have no clue how to fix it. So, pro tip, just always document your stuff as much as possible. Make sure you upload and have backups of everything. Notes everywhere as much as possible. Steve?
I wanted to just add to what you said. It's a window manager user's problem, not a desktop environment problem.
Steve, we just talked about 10 minutes about how buggy Plasma is, so you don't have room to talk.
Touche. You sunk my battleship.
Okay, anybody have us another tip that we can talk about? Steve, you're gonna save us with another tip?
Yep.
All right.
Am I the one? Come on, pony up the cash.
You're the only
Pony up
one
the
that came
cash.
prepared.
I'm the one with
Everyone
the
else
tips
here is just a bunch of slackers. Go ahead.
You bunch of slackers. Okay, here's my other tip. This one is a doozy. Are you ready?
No, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, my tip is if you love what you're using and you're okay with what you're using and you don't have any issues and you're happy as a child, do not join any Linux community right now. Please don't, because you're gonna meet a lot of guys, and I'm not talking about the guys here. here, the guys, they're my brothers, they're my brethren, they're my posse. But
Understand, Steve?
just be careful when you join a Linux community, because a lot of them are going to treat what they use as a religion. So if you encounter such people, just know you joined the wrong community. There are some good communities out there. Don't get me wrong. Like Matt's community, Discord server, you're never gonna meet a better bunch of people. They're amazing.
Except for
But
Jake.
so be careful which community you join. Save yourself the headache. Don't join any until you really need it, unless you really need it.
Matt, how much are you paying this man?
I pay him nothing. He's my cheerleader. Silent Bob, go ahead. No,
I was
Steve.
just adding in that
hold on,
no.
I'm sorry, Bob. Steve, don't put on a costume. I don't need to see you in a cheerleader costume. Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
Oh God. No, I was just sitting here thinking that no, Steve. I mean, there's no toxic people in the Linux community, not at all.
That was the
We
subject.
can't
of
look
my-
at specific distros communities and go, "There's totally no toxic people in here." As I'm looking at Arch and Nix.
No, but that was the subject of my video for tomorrow. So
are you delving
I'm
deep
not-
into
I'm
the
not
Backstreet
pushing-
stuff? Is that what you're getting into?
no. I'm not talking about the Backstreet stuff. That I leave to the professionals who know Hyperland and know Backstreet very well. No, I'm talking. I found a meme on my server that somebody posted on my server, and I used it as the subject of my video. But suffice it to say, there's a lot. Those kind of people cause division, and I was like, "United we stand, divided we fall." Remember that saying? But it kind of sucks. And there's a lot of new to Linux users that keep coming to me for whatever reason, because they saw Zero Linux somewhere. But they come to me and they tell me, I don't want to use Linux anymore, because everywhere I ask for help, in the places I asked for help, all I got was, I'm using Linux wrong. I shouldn't be using Linux, and they were pushing me away from Linux. So I'm like, I need to make a video about this.
Dennis, go ahead.
Use a cheat sheet for I'm specifically talking about permissions for now, because that hasn't been said that much, but like, so you can remember the numbers, like 777, what it actually means. It's more for people who are just learning, but it can still help those of us who know some things about how it works. It can still help. You'll save yourself time if you don't want to memorize it, if you just use a cheat sheet for that.
I use a cheat sheet, but the place I save it is kind of weird. I save it in Telegram saved messages.
That is
They
kind
have
of
a-
weird.
Because Telegram has this saved messages area where you can save a lot of notes for later use. So I save them there because it's easier than having to use Joplin or this app or that app. I know that with Telegram, it's synced across devices on Telegram, and I do use Telegram with family. So I'm like, I'll save them there. I even have serial numbers for applications for games on Windows that I got from Steam, because I have the games on Steam, but I got the original ISOs thanks to War Thunder and our classic collection stuff. Unreal Tournament, for example, 2K4. When you buy the game on Steam, they give you the retail serial number. You can use it on the retail disc or the game on Steam. So I save those serial numbers on Telegram on save on saved messages.
That is weird, Steve. Dennis, go ahead.
Related, there's stickers you can get from Timu. I think that's how the Chinese stores pronounce. The stickers have keyboard shortcuts. Um, and buy those stickers, a couple of ones that look helpful to you, or the mouse pad, and
Ooh.
keep them by your computer.
Steve's Nexus with mousepad. That's an amazing one. I want to really buy that one.
War Thunder, go ahead.
I was going to say, building off that, if you don't know your key bindings, perhaps going through your system and setting key bindings you will remember is a great way to learn some things. Like I use Flame Shot, at least on my non-Wayland systems, and knowing that at a keystroke that I can just pull that up and whatnot, it's great. I'm sure there was a default key binding. I thought it was jank. I prefer just hitting screenshot and Flame Shot popping up, and then I could just take a screenshot. If I need to do full screen or something, then I've got a different app for that. But just being able to do that at a keystrokes notice is just nice to have.
Also, if you were going to customize your key bindings, do it phonetically. Like, don't try to be clever with yourself and then forget that how clever you were. Use B for browser or W for web. Don't use P or V or whatever, some weird letter. Like, just, I mean,
As for suffering,
you use the thing that's going to be the most easy to remember in your brain, because you're going to forget, especially if you have multiple key bindings for multiple things. And I didn't take my own advice, but I'm used to it now. But and it goes to show every time I try to switch to a different keyboard binding or to a different keyboard layout, none of mine are phonetically stored. Like, except for like web browser, the W for web browser, all the other ones are weird. Like, I have Alt A for volume down, Alt D for volume up. Whatever reason, I skipped S. Don't know why. I did. Also, all of my scratch pads are along the bottom row, which I suppose makes sense, but they're not saved to anything that makes sense for what those scratch pads are. They're just random, but like in order. But I'm used to them now. But it's weird. Drew, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think, Matt, you shamed me into changing key bindings at one point, because I would think I was using like Super Shift C for closing a window, and you're like, what the heck? Just do Super Q or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was just like, oh, and then it was like light bulb moment. That makes so much sense.
And just make it as easy as possible. Super Shift C is a default in a lot of window managers, but also it's been perpetuated. I'm a writer, I know words. Anyways, it's all DT's fault is what it is. DT uses Super Shift C, and he's been using it now ever since he started his channel, and he says that stuff over and over again, and every time I want to do it, I just want to take him and just knock him on his bald head. And what are you doing? That's not a good key binding for close. Nobody's gonna think that's not intuitive. That's not what you want to use. Just use Super Q. The most infuriating thing is that some window managers now use Super Q to quit the entire window manager. And if you're used to Super Q and you accidentally do that in the middle of compiling something, if you're on Gen 2, like I did at one point, that's not a good experience. Just make sure you check your key bindings before you start actually doing things in your window manager, because that happens all the time. Super Q is my favorite of all of them. Dennis, go ahead.
So, even if you take the advice that was just given, and even if you make it super easy, the moment you know you're gonna stick to your key bindings for a while, make your own cheat sheet for the key bindings you decided you like, whether it's logical or illogical, and again, put that in a notebook or somewhere where you can access it, and then you'll be able to use your computer really easy from that point on. With between the key bindings and the mouse and all that. I should have done it years ago, even using Windows, but I didn't. So, but I would be really efficient and would have saved tendinitis a few times if I did that.
Drew?
I was just gonna say, here's a tip. I set up actually a keybind for Super H for help, and it's just a script that says these are the most commonly used key bindings for this particular application, or for this particular window manager rather. It's just like, and it just shows up as a list in Dunst on one side. It stays there for 10 seconds, and oh, okay, that's what that is. So that's a tip in case you're in case you're interested. SXHKD, I think Matt, you did like a video on XXHKD like a while back, but that is like that's the shit right there.
So good.
Just being able to move your key bindings from one to another, it's unbelievably useful.
So pro tip there, if you are moving on to Wayland or just in general, there is a Wayland version of SXHKD called SWHKD.
Yep.
It's not quite as good yet, but I think it will get there eventually.
Assuming I get to Wayland ever.
Yeah. I've abandoned Wayland again. Hyperland is just too buggy. D-Dubs, go ahead.
I was going to say, another way to do what Drew is using with Dunst is YAD. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. YAD. It's yet another
Dialogue.
Thank you. And it's very easy to script, and it gives you a nice little window that you can put in all your bindings or whatever you want, and then it will go. You can set a timer for it to collapse, but it has a very nice, like a GTK or QT frame around it. It works pretty cool. It's very easy.
Mm-hmm. There's
sorry, Matt. I should have raised my hand, but the very first version of the Zero Welcome tool on Zero Linux was using YAD. YAD is amazing, but it's got a lot of stuff to learn.
All right, so there's a couple more ways to do the cheat sheet thing if you want to do it. So first, you could just use Awesome WM. It has it built in. I believe actually Xmonad has it built in as well, but don't quote me on that. That might just be DT's version of it. But so Awesome WM has, like, if you hit Super S, we'll bring up a cheat sheet. But if you're not on Awesome, you can do something similar if your window manager supports, if it supports the scratch pads, you can actually create a scratch pad that just opens up a script like Drew has. Instead of going to Dunst, it opens up in a terminal, so it can be scrollable, and it just kind of opens up in a scratch pad. You can go through and do it that way. If anybody knows the Linux Dabbler, he has a YouTube channel. He has an entire video on how to create a script that will basically extract all of the key bindings from whatever window manager you're using. I think he did it for DWM, and it will just do that. He did it first, and then I copied him, then DT copied me. So you have your choices on who you want to watch make that exact same script, because it's literally the exact same script. All three of us did the same damn video, one right after another. It's hilarious. Dennis, go ahead.
This one is a question I had to ask about that script. Does that particular script actually work in desktop environment window managers as well, or no?
No, because it searches through a configuration file. But I think it wouldn't be too hard to do something similar with probably KDE, because I think KDE will store all their stuff in various places where you could easily extract it. GNOME, I'm not so sure about. I'm not sure. GNOME, you'd probably have to use something like Decomp Editor or something to extract that kind of stuff, because GNOME is
GNOME.
It's GNOME. That's exactly what it is. I don't know enough about GNOME to be able to tell you, but I believe with Plasma you'd easily be able to pull that out of the configuration file somewhere, because KDE has configuration files everywhere. Steve, go ahead.
I wanted to just add to the key bindings thing for KDE. Yes, KDE has one configuration file where it stores everything, but here's the thing with KDE. It has this configuration file, but it follows another configuration file as well. But the second configuration file you will never find. I could never find it. And I've been using KDE for 5 years. But as far as GNOME stores everything in dconf, and they do not advertise dconf enough.
At all.
They like, or at all, basically, because there's a lot of things. If you open dconf editor, which is included on KDE for whatever reason, but doesn't work on KDE very well, it crashes until you open it manually via terminal. But if you launch it from the app menu, it crashes. But whatever, that's nor here nor there. But with the GNOME, there's so many things that are amazing. Once you start digging into dconf, there are things you never thought possible on GNOME. But they hide it. They give you the thing. They never talk about it. It's their hidden little thing. It's up to the user to discover. I don't know why they keep it that way. Maybe because they don't want people to mess too much around with it and cause their system to crash, but whatever. I discovered so many things in there that made my life livable.
Well, part of the reason why they don't is because they don't want people to break things. They want people to use it the way that they have set up, but also because they have experimental stuff in there. So if you right now GNOME doesn't support fractional scaling outside of 100 and 200%. That's the way they do it. So if you want to use incremental fractional scaling, like if you want 125%, you have to use dconf editor in order to do that.
Yeah.
Now that's going to change, but that's been there for well over a year, and that's where they've tested it, is with that dconf setting.
Same with VRR.
Yeah, so that's where they do a lot of their testing for stuff, and it's a lot of that stuff's just not stable. So that's the reason why they don't, because they want GNOME to be as stable as possible, which I admire, but it also obviously limits GNOME to just being the way the GNOME is, which is fine. I think that when it comes to key bindings, my favorite thing to do, or my favorite tip is to, especially, I always have to remind myself that I'm not normal in this regard, that I use multiple things, and that most people just use GNOME or they just use KDE. They're never going to switch back and forth between them, usually. At least not as often as I do. But if you do switch, or you think you might switch in the future, always use the same key bindings, like everywhere. Don't ever change your key binding going to different places. Just it will seriously confuse you and ruin your muscle memory, especially if you've been using the same key bindings for a while. Like if you're like Drew said, if you use Super C, Super Q to quit, use that everywhere. Don't use Super Shift C here, Super X in other places, because not only will it confuse you and ruin your muscle memory, but some window managers do weird things with those key bindings already existing. So if you use Super Q to quit stuff, and then you go into another one and use Super X because you have that bound to something else, you might end up quitting your window manager by accident, which for most people is not going to be a big deal, but you might lose work or something. So just use the key bindings, same key bindings everywhere, and also make that the first thing that you do every time you switch to something. Just go in there, make sure your key bindings are exactly right and exactly the way that you wanted to do. Don't do it over a period of time. Just like don't. Oh yeah, I haven't set that key binding, and the only reason I know I didn't do it is because I just spawned random thing in the middle of a stream, right? Just brought up my porn directory in the middle of my stream. I don't want to see that. There you go, Matt. You just demonetized, but just kidding. But anyways, you want just make sure your key bindings are in the way that needs to be. So, Steve, go ahead.
He yells at me he asked me not to demonetize him, and yet
it was going to be one of us too. You knew it was. You know it was going to be one of
Steve's job. What are you talking about? He's the one that's supposed to get us demonetized. We're all saints over here.
At least I can only blame myself this time.
Anyway, I just wanted to add to your recommendation here. Just FYI, Eric Dubois beat you to it. He uses the same key bindings on every single window manager he includes in Arca Linux.
Well, I mean, he kind of has to. There's only like 4,000 of them.
Yeah, well, now you can install all 4000 using a single ISO instead of a 4000 ISOs.
The way that it should have been all along. But yeah, I I don't know. So I've been using Xmonad for a little while now, and or I guess I'm back on Xmonad now for a little while, and I have problems with the way it does key bindings out of the box. So I switched over to their easy config, and then I remembered that Qtile has an easy config too. So I went into my Qtile build, and I was like, I'm going to switch away from my to the traditional way of, the standard way of doing key bindings, which, XK underscore whatever, and then moved over to the easy config. And it's not as, I really wish they just used the easy config to begin with, because it would make it so much easier. Because it's easy right in the name, but it's not. Unfortunately, doing the switching away around in tags the way they have it requires quite a bit of Python knowledge if you're going to switch over to doing the easy config, which is disappointing. Steve, go ahead.
This is another tip. Dude, I have so many. This is a tip for everyone listening or watching this. Please, for the love of God, don't do anything Matt does.
What I do?
Don't go installing a million window managers in desktop environments on your system unless you want to suffer like Matt is. That explains why he's mad all of the time, why he's angry all the time.
That was the last time we saw Steve ever again.
I'm perfectly happy with the way things are. What are you talking about?
You are happy. That doesn't mean everybody will be.
You can install as many window managers as you want. Don't listen to Steve. Now, where you'll end up with problems is if you decide to install GNOME and KDE side by side. Then you'll have some issues. Don't do that. Surprisingly, though, if you want to install Plasma and XFC together, doesn't seem to be an issue. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to kind of agree with you, Matt. You have to be careful about which you choose. But I've run quite a few together. Sometimes, yeah, you can run into some issues, but
you can install a KDE Plasma and Hyperland together.
Of course you can.
Yeah, well, I've done. Yeah,
why would you?
Just don't exactly, Drew.
Honestly,
why would you do that?
Sometimes it is just the one reason, for example, is I like having an X11 backup to a Wayland system for some applications, or even running Discord until Discord gets their stuff together, things like that. But honestly, like I say, I watched your video, Drew. I was like, man, I haven't done DWM in so long. I've just always kind of hated it I'm just going to throw it in. I'm going to do it the hard way. I'm going to do it the NixOS way. But it challenges you. It gives you a reason to get out of your comfort zone. It gives you a reason to go try something and learn something at the same time.
But Arch does that without having to install anything on top.
No, you have to learn how to repair things.
Same with Arch. Yeah. Well, no.
Arch is just damage control, right?
Exactly.
No,
Arch
not
necessarily. Arch is 911.
Arch is not 911. It's okay. It has its 911 moments, but whatever you install on it, it's your building stuff on top, kind of. So you learn as you go. That's why, by maintaining a distro like Zero Linux for a long time, now it's dead. Don't ask how to get it, because it's gone. But by maintaining a distro, for me at least, I felt I was digging myself a hole, because users would rely on me to fix their problems, and which I didn't want. I wanted the whole idea was to teach them how to be self-reliant. By doing everything for them, I wasn't teaching them that. So I decided to call it quits and to force their hand in a good way, to learn and to be self-reliant. And by being self-reliant, you're gonna be learning a lot, and you're gonna thank me for it.
DWM definitely is the window manager that you'll learn the most on how window managers are going to work. If you're going to use it, you're going to learn a lot about how it works, and you're going to learn way more C than you ever thought that you would, because there's situations where you just kind of have to finagle things, especially the more patches that you decide you're going to install, the more you're going to learn. Not just because there's more patches, but because they conflict with each other more, which means you're going to be delving into DWM.C more and more and more. Excuse me, Dennis, go ahead.
Bless you.
I remembered something I did years ago when I was a lot less experienced. If your particular Linux is being installed on a router, um, and you access it with the command line to do some work, never as part of your troubleshooting. People will probably know this, but I had to say it anyway for those who might not. Never bring down your network with your command unless you're immediately bringing it back up in the same command. Um, it's something I did years and years ago, and it caused problems. It sort of kind of created a semi brick.
War Thunder, go ahead.
Yeah, to lead on to that, and I did this fairly recently. I wish I had video of it. I would have totally posted it. On that note, when you're SSHing into your server, if you're trying to do some maintenance and whatnot, and you're trying to make sure your firewall is set up correctly, because I installed Debian, realized 2 months later I didn't have a firewall. Well, for a server, that would be kind of nice to have, you know?
Yeah.
So I installed firewall and I enabled standard profile, and then I was like, okay, I need to shut down the ports I don't need. I had a list of them, of the ones I did need, except I neglected to remember which port SSH was on. And so while blocking all the firewall ports, I also blocked my own SSH connection, and partially bricked the server. So then I had to have my wife help me hold a portable monitor off the front of the server so I could have a wireless keyboard and like unblock the SSH port so I could get back into my own server. So pay attention to when you do stuff like that to not absolutely screw yourself over.
Here's another tip as well, that's kind of similar to that, although it doesn't have anything to do with SSH. If you're going to have an external hard drive that is going to be auto-mounted through FSTab, and then you disconnect the external hard drive, before you reboot, remove the FSTab entry so that you don't have to boot into emergency mode and then remove it that way. I'd actually, because I moved my external hard drive over to my new home lab setup, and I forgot to do that. So it was, my system was running fine, and then I did one of the updates for OpenSUSE, which was actually smaller than the 5 last week. Last week with the whole XZ thing, they literally redid the entire repository, so it was like thousands of fucking upgrades. But I did an update this time, came back, and it just sat there in Plymouth for ages and ages. So I hit escape, like, what's going on here? And it had a start job of like 2 minutes. It was looking for that UUID, which no longer existed because they had unhooked the drive. I was like, oh, I did this again. Just, if you're going to do this, remove the entry from FSTab, and you won't have problems. Also, I've been told that you really shouldn't use FSTab for external hard drives, but I do it all the time anyways. So, Steve, go ahead.
To add to what you just said, that's another add-on tip, bonus tip to what Matt just said. Never ever mount your other drives or external drives into your home directory. Just mount them into MNT. Never mount them into your home directory, because if you mount them into, especially external drives, you mount them into your home directory, you eject the drive, and you reboot, you're in for a hell of a lot of trouble because your system won't boot, because it's not able to to mount it into your home directory. So your home directory is unmountable by that extension.
Also, it fucks around with your permissions when you mount it into your home directory, because all of your stuff in your home directory belongs to you, and you only. And most of the times when a system service is running, it has its own user, or it mimics the way the user would work, but it's not you, so it doesn't have permission that you have. So I'm actually experiencing this right now on my home lab, is that I mounted my RAID array in the home directory because Jellyfin is perfectly fine. You use the Jellyfin server Flatpak, you can go through and just give it permission through Flatseal. Works fine. But I decided I was going to use Plex, and Plex has the problem. It has its own user, it has its own group, and those things don't have access to the home directory. Even if you give them permission specifically to the one directory, it has to have permissions all the way through the file path. And I'm struggling with that right now, which it's just mount it in MMT or mount it in your root directory, whatever you want to do. Just don't mount it in home. Excellent tip there, Steve. Dennis, go ahead.
This is only a problem if in some places, like right now, I don't have that problem anymore. But if for some reason you're using Windows to access Samba servers, but you need more than 26 network drives for some reason, like these Buffalo NASs that I use, that the best way to work with them is use more than 26 drives. But you're trying to access them from Windows, create a server with Linux that is another Samba server separate from your NASs or whatever that's sharing the drives, and basically mount behind the scenes all those drives on that one Samba server. At least you could with older software. I hope you can with newer. But and then share the directory you've mounted them in. Reshare it with your Samba server,
So
and then you have one master drive for all your drives.
Yep, because the drive letters on Windows.
Also, pro tip, don't use Samba. There's my pro tip. Don't use Samba. Use NFS instead. It's much better. Or, I mean, if you don't mind a project that's not being maintained anymore, SSHFS is still really good. Again, not maintained anymore, but it still works great. Just Samba is a pain in the rear end on Linux because it's a Windows protocol. That's the reason why it works better on Windows than it ever will on Linux, because it was meant for Windows. It's not meant for Linux. So I always have there's one Samba tutorial online that works every time. It's the Ask Ubuntu tutorial for Samba. It works on any distro, but for whatever reason you find any other tutorial, none of them work. Steve, go ahead.
I wanted to agree with you on that one. That's why I'm following my own tip. I turned every that guide that I found on Ask Ubuntu into a script, and I included it, and I turned it into a what you call it, install script in a meta package that I created for Samba called Samba support. And now whenever you install Samba, my Samba meta package, for example, is going to install everything necessary for Samba. It's going to start the services, create the directory, share the Samba shares directory, add you as a user to the group, and then run that install script that I created following the Ask Ubuntu guide. And now it works flawless. I'm using Samba right now to share between my two Linux boxes because I'm constantly downloading on one machine, copying to another machine, and Samba just works that way. Just don't, like Matt said, don't follow any other guide because none of them work. That's the only one that does.
It's really weird because, I mean,
it's really strange. Arch, OpenSUSE, Artix, you name it. Well, not Artix, sorry. Artix is non-systemd, but anything with systemd works.
Yeah. It's not like it's like 6 or 12 pages long. It's just like a couple.
A paragraph long.
Yeah, it works really well. It's very surprising. Of course, Samba still has its own problems, but also the default configuration file for Samba
It's broken.
is
It
broken
has been broken.
for a long time. So if you want to use a regular configuration file, just go grab Arcos because Eric has it working fairly well.
Why did you uncover my secret?
Because that's the way you always do. When in doubt, you need a configuration file for something. Literally, just go grab it from Arco because he has configuration files for everything. Like you name the
Yep.
window manager, he has a configuration file for it. Okay, just go grab his. It's all on GitHub, and you don't have to put
Yep.
any work. And you don't like. I love DT. He's a great guy, but all of his configuration files are written in org mode. So
Yeah.
for us non-Emacs losers, not very useful for us. So don't. Also, here's a rant that's going to make a lot of NixOS users happy. People who use Home Manager, they all do things a little bit differently. So grabbing their configuration files, not always the easiest for the rest of us who use real distros. Just gonna put that out there. Been seeing this a lot on Unix porn because a lot of the Unix porn guys are using NixOS these days, and they all use Home Manager, which means their dot files are all weird, just weird. Steve, go ahead.
Another tip from a bag of tips. Like Matt said, if in doubt, go over to Arcos. You're gonna find a shit ton of configuration files. It's so much fun digging through his configuration files. And if, in case you didn't know, maybe 45% of the configuration files I used on Zero Linux for the entirety of its lifespan were modified versions of Arco. Just putting it out there.
Some of mine are still modified versions of Arco. Like my i3 configuration file started off as an Arco config. It's way different now because I've sourced everything and put everything into smaller files and removed all the nonsense. My Polybar configuration file started off as an Arco configuration file. I've removed obviously everything that I don't need and have created separate files now because I don't want every bar in the same config file. But yeah, that's exactly the way I've done it. D-Dubs, go ahead. I'm going to get drubbed by a NixOS user right now. This is going to happen.
Not drugged. I'm just a clarification and a slight defense of NixOS. Home Manager is simply a template, and I think you know that. So how you use it is completely up to you. So yes, it is not like, oh, Home Manager does this. No, Home Manager is a framework. And I use it in many pure NixOS users would like blackball me if they saw what I did, because I don't do everything the Nix way. In other words, I don't declare everything Nix. Sometimes I just say, you know what, I have this really working, really good Toml file for Starship, and I have this really good config for this. I'm just going to have it copy it. I'm not going to actually declare it in the Nix language. So yes, absolutely, it's hard to transplant because you're taking how someone decided they want to build their system and trying to make it work in your own. Unlike a traditional dot files where my config hyperland. I mean, you've seen even with hyperland, some people break it up. Some people go, no, I want this one big massive hyperland config file. No, I want a bunch of small ones.
Oh.
So again, yeah, there's always a little bit of adjustment, but yeah, I'm not going to let a dig on Nix go undefended. It's not deserved.
I knew it was going to trigger you when I said it, but I'm still absolutely right on this one. Where just troll through Unix porn and find the NixOS users. They won't be hard to find. They'll all usually put NixOS right in the title. But every single one of them, well, not every single, the ones that use Home Manager all do it in a little bit different way, which is fine, and it works great with NixOS. But if you're a non-NixOS user and you're looking to steal those configuration files, it's not necessarily always easy. Tyler's, for whatever reason, usually work pretty good because he has his all separated out fairly well. Other people don't do it that way, which is fine. There's no reason why. That's fine. It's just I prefer them not to even share the dot files to begin with because I get my hopes up. I like, oh, I see this awesome rice that I want to steal for Xmonad or for Hyperland or whatever. It's always Hyperland, by the way. I don't think I've ever seen a NixOS Xmonad user. I don't think I've ever seen that. Now that I think about it, that's weird.
I'm sure there's one out there somewhere.
I'm gonna hear from
Very
somebody.
lonely.
Yeah, I'm gonna hear from somebody. But I don't think I've ever seen it. But anyways, you want to steal the Hyperland rice, and you go to their dot files because they're very nice to share them, and you realize that their configuration files not in the traditional format. It's been home managery, and it's not something that you can just oh, there's the .comp file, I can
Exactly.
I can steal it, which is fine. That's fine. But that's my biggest complaint with Nix is that it's kind of walled gardeny, if we can call that. Once you're in and you do all your stuff the Nix way, it's really hard, or not really hard, but at least more effort than it should be to take your stuff and take it somewhere else. Especially if you're going to live, like if you don't use Home Manager, you're fine. It's gonna be great. You just abandon your Nix config, whatever. But if you use Home Manager, you use Flakes, all this stuff, it can lead you to doing things that way and learning that way and stuff, and it just makes it hard to transfer between distros. It's not a big deal, because most people aren't going to transfer between distros. They're not just, most people aren't the huge distro hopper that I am, or at least that I was. So most
what
of
I
it's
will say
me
about that
problem.
is, again, it's a choice, because you could use Home Manager like I do on many of my configs to literally just copy that hyperland.config, for example, or literally just copy uh, whatever the config file is. So you could simply go and grab those. But the Nix way, this declarative way, if you accept that as this is how I want to build my system, says that is, not as efficient or not as desired. But Nix is a programming language. That's the one thing you just have to accept about it. Like we were talking earlier with DWM, you need a little bit of C knowledge to really get into and modify and make DWM your own. So there is, without a doubt, I will wholeheartedly say NixOS is not for everybody. 1000%. I will never say, oh, NixOS is the distribution. It should be way everything is done. Of course not. But if you like that kind of construction, if you like the benefits you get once it's built, then you're willing to put up with a little bit of the pain of learning it.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Huh? Oh,
You had your hand raised.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot. I'm so drunk, I forgot. Hey, I'm having Jack Daniels. But anyway, I have another tip.
Okay.
Do you want more?
Yeah,
Or do
bring
you
it
want
on.
Less?
I'm here for another 10 minutes or so. Go ahead.
Okay. When using Linux, this is a tip for everyone who is considering coming to Linux. Keep an open mind. And I'm going to tell you this, and some people are going to fight me, and they're going to disagree with me. But when you come to Linux, you have to accept the fact that terminal is your friend. So a tip, when you encounter issues with an app that's not launching, that's not giving you any error message, run it from terminal, because terminal is very blabbermouthy. It will show you every error in case of any, and it's going to be very verbose and show you where the error lies. I'm going to give you an example. Recently, for us NVIDIA users, and Matt will have a smile on his face or a smirk on his face because he's an AMD show. Just kidding. But for us NVIDIA users, for the better part of 12 days, OBS was giving out an unknown error message if and when using NVENC encoder. And any Flatpak that you use that requires NVENC, like Kdenlive, for example, because yes, I install it as a Flatpak because I'm a Flatpak person. I'm crazy like that. But hey, there's Matt. He beat me to it. He's more crazy than I am. But when you run anything that requires NVENC encoder and you try to encode or record or go live or whatever, you would get this unknown error. We couldn't find the root of the issue until we ran it from terminal, and we got the exact error message, which is never represented in GUI mode for whatever reason. It ended up being FFmpeg being the culprit. That's why FFmpeg received a major update on FlatHub. So now everything works, but without terminal, we wouldn't have known. So accept the fact that even though you hate terminal, if you really hate terminal, don't use Linux. That's basically it. But on
Little
Linux, terminal
gatekeepery there,
is your best
Steve.
friend. What?
Just a little gatekeepery. I agree with you that you probably should learn terminal. That you should learn.
Yeah, I'm
But
not
you don't-
saying
You
not.
don't
I'm,
have to.
you don't have to, but what I'm saying is terminal is your best friend when it comes to issues like that.
troubleshooting.
I'm not saying you have to use terminal,
I-
but accept that it's your friend, your ally.
Yeah, I don't disagree that it's a good tool. D-Dubs, go ahead.
Also, another really good thing to learn, and some people don't like it, I realize this, is systemd. I would suspect that same error that you saw on the console was in the systemd journals.
Yeah, logs. Like
Yeah, journal CTL.
Look
yeah.
at the logs. If you're on OpenSUSE, Yast has access to all the logs. It's
That's
really
very true. I will give them that. I will absolutely concede that to you about OpenSUSE and SUSE.
yeah. Yast is the best. It's so good.
I won't concede that.
it's the best. It doesn't look the best,
Thank you.
but it's the best.
It is from years and years and years. It has been. It should have been what other distros had included. I agree with you.
I just wish that they paid more attention to it. The problem is, OpenSUSE. I love OpenSUSE with all my heart. I'm never leaving this distro ever. But there are a couple things that just really truly bug me. First off, and both of them are the exact same problem. They don't put effort into the important things. They're always creating something new. So they always have a new distro spin. They have a a new immutable project that they're working on. All this stuff. When they have Zipper doesn't have parallel downloads. They've been working on it since 2016 or something like that. It just doesn't exist. And they're not working on it. I've been told explicitly by the Zipper developers that it's no longer well, I haven't really had word problems today. It's not something that they want to work on anymore, for reasons like because Zipper is not the future, so they're not working on it anymore. Another thing is Yast. Yast hasn't had a significant update in 15 years. It still works exactly the same way that it did in 2004. It still works basically in the same way as it did when it was introduced in 1996. It hasn't had a significant update since now. They've added features and stuff into it, but the interface has basically remained the same. And one of the reasons why Yast has so much guff against it is because it opens up everything in a new window. Like, God, that bugs the crap out of me. Like, I don't want to have to deal with 12 different windows every time I want to install something. It doesn't. Have you ever heard of? Don't you swallow? I mean, come on. It bugs the crap out of me, and the fact that they're not working on it bugs me. It feels like a lot of the things that have made OpenSUSE are being left behind because they have something new and shiny to pay attention to. Steve, go ahead.
My last tip for today. I have given so many, and they're not free anymore. You want to know more? Pony up. But my last tip is if you're a newcomer to Linux and you want to enjoy your time on Linux, Linux Mint Debian Edition. Most wonderful distro I've ever used in my whole entire existence for when I wanted stability. And when it comes to people asking me, I want to get into this thing called Linux. I was like, Linux Mint Debian Edition. I'll install it for you. Enjoy yourself. You want Facebook? Open the App Store, click Facebook, install, done. Be happy. Enjoy your time on Linux instead of having to murder animals after every update. But yeah, this is my last tip of this episode. So take it, enjoy it, and spend and be happy.
Okay, we'll all be happy. War Thunder, go ahead.
No, to play off that honestly, the way I've always done it is if you want a good place to start to try and figure out where you want to be as far as the way Linux and that works, if you've got if you need drivers, basically if you got NVIDIA, if you've got some weird Wi-Fi drivers or whatnot,
Pop OS.
the Ubuntu edition of Linux Mint is much better at doing drivers than LMDE. But if you're Intel or AMD machine, you don't need any drivers or anything. LMDE's maybe I would call it a little more advanced than Linux Mint, but it's a good place. To me, if you want something advanced, you're going to go to the OpenSUSE tumbleweeds. You're going to go to the Arch Linux. You're going to go to the Fedoras of the world anyway. If you're just wanting something simple to start out, like Steve said, Linux Mint, LMD, Pop OS, those are very simple distros to get started with.
Yep.
Also,
I've had
Linux Mint for the win.
and me as an Arch user recommending LMDE, some people find it weird. They would think that the only distro I would recommend is Arch because that's what I spend most of my time in. I'm like, no, I'm a realist. I'm not a guy that would recommend the thing that he uses to everyone. I
Oh,
just
I am.
recommend the right thing.
Sorry, Steve.
Ex neon hombre. But I do always recommend LMDE because I spent time in LMDE. I never, and as an NVIDIA user, never had an issue. Granted, they offer old versions of drivers. You will never get the bleeding edge, nor will you on any other Debian base unless you add explicitly go one step beyond and add the PPAs and the NVIDIA PPAs, and you force it to install the latest drivers. But no normal beginner user will do that. They will just click on whatever's there and install. And the fact that those distros have a big community behind them, a good community behind them, a solid community, and a lifetime of knowledge behind them, they shouldn't encounter any issues. So that's why I will always recommend either, as you said, War Thunder, Pop OS, LMDE, or Ubuntu itself.
I'm not. I apologize. I don't know who was first. So Drew, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna. I think LMDE is a really solid choice for beginning user. Not to mention the fact. Well, I will say this: Cinnamon. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily. I mean, let's put it this way: I put LMDE on our community laptop that sits in our in my kitchen that my wife and my son uses. You know, I am not going to choose to use that, but to your point, I think it is more of a beginner type distro. I wish Cinnamon was better, but it is real. If you are transitioning away from let's say Windows or Mac, it's probably the easiest transition point.
Yep.
You know, it just is. I will say that this XFCE has not gotten the love I thought it would get on this particular in this particular user group. Matt.
I mean, I've got some XFCE systems running around. I've got one I used earlier that is the Linux Mint, but the XFCE version, and I think it's pretty good.
I'm having a fight with XFCE at the moment, so I haven't been giving as much love as possible. So, but that's more of a.
I've been watching. I have to say, I have been watching their they have that one thing on their wiki that talks about their transitioning into Wayland or to be able to use Wayland, and I'm like fascinated by that because I thought I mean they're clearly one of the last to adopt as far as major desktop environments. But I mean, to me, I think XFCE as far as Xort is the gold standard. That's just my personal opinion. I know that I am probably in the minority in a big way, but
I mostly agree. All right, we got a lot of people here. I think Dennis, you were next.
So when you are installing Linux with any fairly decent installer, or I'm sure you can do it if you do it from the command line as well, because that would be more advanced to do. But I prefer installers. But when you when you install it, um, you are able with Linux to split your drive, your file system up into multiple physical drives. That would be that definition of drive. So physical drives for people who didn't know that. And that can be useful if you've what I used it for recently is a tablet that had an SD card reader. Um but I wanted the tablet to function without plugging in a USB device so that it's still portable. So I split it between the internal storage and the SD card. The downside is if I take out the SD card, who knows what'll happen to the tablet in that case. But it was easier to reinstall than it was to move the user directory over. But yeah, I thought people should know about that too if they don't already. Some people here will already know about it, but I thought some people might not know about it too.
Good tip. Bob?
I just was going to elaborate on the idea earlier that like there's no XFCE support. I mean, that's literally what I always have as my fallback DE when I need like a DE for any reason. I'm always in DWM, but XFCE has always just been that solid. It never breaks, at least in ways that I use it.
I wish I could say that, but I don't think I'm having an XFC problem. I think I'm having a display manager problem. Because whatever reason, I install XFCE through YAS, and I get to extract applications, and it works fine. You know, the installation looks like it works fine, and then I go into, you know, I reboot or whatever, and go back out into SDDM, select XFCE session, and it just kicks me right back out to the display manager. I tried it with GDM, and I'm having the same problem. I'm 100,000% that it's going to be a display manager problem, probably having to do with something with it defaulting to having too much Wayland taint on it or something. I don't know.
Possibly.
Yeah, there's something weird going on there. I haven't had the interest in actually solving it and looking into the logs. Eventually, I will, but XFC is.
I did that just to give it a test, make sure it isn't an XFCE problem. Just drop back into a TTY and just do a start X on XFCE.
Yeah, like I said, I just haven't been interested enough to figure out what's going on there. But eventually, I will. Steve, go ahead. I'm sorry, making you wait. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to add to Drew's Drew's thing that where XFCE doesn't receive love. Zero Linux had an XFCE, and I enjoyed customizing XFCE more than I did GNOME. And I would know so much about XFCE that I consider it as my second best favorite desktop environment. I even use app menu, app menu, and I put, of course, I mimic my KDE setup on everything. So I like to have my app menu at the top and the bar at the top. People were surprised that XFCE even had that capability. So I was like, "No, it's easy. Just you have to know which packages to install, and there you go. It's right there." So
There's a lot of
XFCE is, yeah, it's so easy to customize, and it's so freaking stable. And I agree with Drew. I hope one day we get the Linux Mint XFCE as the main, not as a secondary whatever.
Never gonna
thingy.
happen.
That's never gonna happen. I know because I know Clem.
Cinnamon is their baby.
Cinnamon is their baby, and Clément. I have talked to Clément on occasions. We speak French because he's French, and I'm French educated. So, but Clem is not with the idea. He was like the sentence he mentioned was drop the subject, please. It's not up for debate. So, but XFCE is awesome, and Matt, you told me that on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
You used to love customizing it.
I still do. If I could get to run, I'd probably be using it right now because I'm having a problem finding something that I enjoy using. I didn't enjoy Plasma because it's Plasma. I didn't enjoy GNOME because it's GNOME. I'm in Xmonad right now, but I don't like Haskell. Hyperland, they introduce 3 bugs every week that are show-stopping. Like the latest one is OBS just crashing the entire system for no reason, taking you right back out to the SDDM. And when you this time, like normally when you get into the Hyperland issues and you make an issue or you comment on an issue or whatever, it's usually pretty good. Like they'll go find it and they'll go fix it. This time, several people were having the same problem. All those people had NVIDIA cards. So they said it was an NVIDIA problem. I do not have an NVIDIA card that was having the exact same problem, but when I said something, well, you must have an NVIDIA problem. Like, I don't have an NVIDIA card. So I gave up on that. Anyways, Bob, go ahead.
Well, that's your problem. No NVIDIA card.
Yeah, I should just go get an NVIDIA card. That's what I should do. Yeah. Bob.
Yeah. And I was just going to elaborate on, I was just going to basically add a little short jab on Steve's point. Because, I mean, does any sane person really enjoy customizing GNOME? Do they really?
No.
Exactly.
Extensions break.
I ran GNOME back when I first started, and I remember it being such an adventure to just plug in for this, plug in for that, plug in for this. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's not. When I used to customize, when I first released the Zero Linux GNOME edition with my rice, guess what? One of the GNOME, not developers but contributors. This is the better term, contributors. He had only 3 followers, but he was nonetheless a contributor to upstream GNOME. He attacked me and he immediately linked me to Don't Theme Our Apps website or something like that. He was like, cease and desist. You shouldn't encourage people to theme GNOME. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting me know that I should drop GNOME.
XFC is great, and I love the bar. Like it has the best bar of any.
Ooh, bar none.
Hands down.
Yeah, it's so good. And if you want to get really technical in it, you can go in there and do some CSS work. If you know some CSS, it works so good. And every little applet that you add can be customized with CSS, which means that you can make it look exactly the way that you want it to work if you want to do that kind of work. Or if you don't want to, you don't have to.
The only annoying thing about the bar is centering it is a bitch.
Yes, you have to do that manually, and it works if you're just doing it for you. If you're just doing it for you and you're using it for your screen resolution stuff, if you were doing that for a distro like you were trying to do, that's a pain in the ass. Drew, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that the one problem that I have with XFCE, and it might be just a me problem, is that it doesn't work very well on higher resolution monitors, as far as scaling is concerned. The other thing I was going to say was a positive for XFCE is I think if you want to make that transition into a more keyboard centric shortcut type or key binding type of desktop environment, XFCE is fantastic for that. That's how I learned as far as being able to transition from a purely desktop environment to a window manager. XFCE provided me that kind of like muscle memory assistance.
My issue with the key binding thing on XFCE is that they have it bifurcated into 2 different places. So they have the one for applications, and then they have the one for the window manager, and it's 2 different places. That bugs me, but I got used to it. And it's not the only thing they do for that. They have a whole bunch of stuff that is just kind of in weird places.
That's fair.
But once you start using it, it's fine.
This XFCE was where I learned XML, XAML.
Yeah. Where I learned XML was from VirtualBox. Because if you want to do anything in VirtualBox and you don't want to mess around with their stupid limited options, you have to get into XML. All right,
Yeah.
that's gonna. You guys are free to continue on and have a good time here. The room will remain open always. This link shouldn't ever change actually, so you can carry on without me if you want to. But I gotta get up out of this chair. So. Thanks everybody for coming. It was a fantastic discussion as always. I will do a similar poll for the next one. The next one will happen. All right, Matt, where's Discord? There we go. The next one is on
25th.
no, the next one is on yeah, the 25th. That's it. Yep. April 25th, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Looks like for whatever reason Discord ended the event on us. We're not still here. You didn't know that. Okay, thank you, Discord, for being a piece of crap as always. But anyways, April 25th, 8:15 p.m. I'll do a poll a week beforehand, just like I did this time, for the next topic. Some of them will be retreads of the ones that lost here. The ones that did poorly, I won't reuse. If you have ideas to go on the poll, either ping me or DM me or email me or whatever, and we'll add them on there. There's no limit in straw poll as to how many options I can add, so we'll just add them all if you have
we
options.
should talk about the Hyperland Vaxstream mess. Everybody else is.
I'm gonna stay as far away from
you are
that
so smart.
as possible. Just have no interest in getting delved in. Brody's very brave, but I think he was right that he had, because he's been such a Hyperland Wayland fanboy, he had to make a video on it.
And having Vaxstream on his show.
Yeah.
And I think he did a very nice job covering it without feeling too biased.
Yeah, he did. He didn't take any personal opinion whatsoever. He just said people agree on. Yeah, he did. He did as good a job as it was possible to have. And that comment section is still fucking toxic as fuck. Welcome to Linux community, where we just decide to
Hell yeah.
just eat each other. You know, it's so stupid.
Watch my video tomorrow, and you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, that's it for me. But anyways, everybody who tuned in live, thank you guys so very, very much for tuning in live. We did a fairly good job of not getting too demonetized. So that's good.
You demonetized yourself.
I did. But anyways, thanks everybody for watching.
Steve was a good boy.
Thank you.
We do this twice per month. So if you want to join us, join the Discord. That's where the link will always live, or I'll try to share it during the log, which I always do. So you can join us live if you want to. And yeah, that's it. So thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.
I'll see you on May 9th.
Yeah.
Have a good day.